What up? What up? What up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy Will Ware checking in. How you doing? How you living? We're almost there, folks. We are basically a week away from the start of the regular season. It's almost time. And to help me break down the Celtics' fourth preseason game, joining me tonight, we have my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. What it do, my dude?
I'm feeling great, man. Celtics look awesome. Ready to get into this. Ready for the regular season to start, bro.
Right? So just real quick before we get into preseason game 4, isn't it wild to think about we're 1 week away from this. The next time we see the Celtics and Knicks play, it's opening night for the Celtics, Madison Square Garden. Tuesday night will be the official NBA opening night, but Wednesday night, Celtics, Knicks kick it off. Hey, we're almost there, man. It's a really, really exciting feeling to feel like we're this close to being back to the regular season.
Is it weird that I'm like this excited about preseason basketball?
No, because this is what we do, man. This is
Yeah.
this is what we do, and you and Adam have talked a lot about it, especially in August. Like this is one of the first real off seasons,
hmm
not just for us covering, but well, kind of for us covering because it's all been so weird with COVID. There's been so many exceptions, and like the Celtics went to the finals the year before, and so everything just kind of steamrolled into one. This had a little bit of it played out a little bit slower this offseason.
hmm
And so it hit a lull where it was really tough to figure out what else we're gonna say. And then of course, in what's become classic Celtics fashion, night before media day, training camp, it's been on, right? Like ding, 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 ring the bell. Like we've had topics nonstop, we've had material nonstop, and now we're just so excited that with all of this news, there's physical, actual basketball to talk about. Like there's real things, real tangible things, not just, hey, let's simulate in our mind or fire up 2K and think about what this looks like. We're actually getting to see it. So I don't think you're in the wrong at all. And I think most Celtics fans feel that way.
Yeah, and the Garden's popping already. They mentioned on the broadcast that last year Friday night didn't quite have like a Friday night feel. It didn't feel like an outing. And we've talked
Mm-hmm.
about this, how sometimes the Garden crowd can wait to get into it versus being into it right from the get-go. And I think the team had like grown a little stale, even though people were still excited to see, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. What were they going to become? Rob Williams, how many lob dunks could he have in one game? Marcus Smart diving on the floor. When you see the same product put out there year in and year out, it does grow a little bit stale. So I think that we have Drew Holiday in the fold. We have the brand new coaching staff. Jeff Van Gundy's in the mix. We got Kristaps Porzingis. And then, without Marcus Smart there, just like the idea that we have to watch this team kind of coalesce and become something brand new. I think everybody's excited just to watch brand new basketball. And I am too.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I think Theo Epstein talked about this maybe on the Bill Simmons podcast a couple of years ago, where he was saying at 10 years after anything, it just gets stale. The Celtics weren't quite at 10 years, but you think Marcus Smart was here for 9 years. The Jays have been here for the majority of that time. And we've talked a bunch about we've seen for the last 3 to 4 years, oh, we can't beat a zone. Oh, we can't, have a functioning offense late in certain games. And so to your point, that staleness was there. And from the first preseason game this season, you felt a different atmosphere. And Drew Holiday, Kristaps has talked about this a lot. I think you can see on Kristaps' face that this is a little bit of a shock for him. I'm sure, because the Garden was kind of Madison Square Garden, that is, was kind of popping during his rookie season or his first couple of years in the league. So I'm sure this is kind of, he's been in, he's been isolated from this type of environment for the last couple of years between COVID, playing for the Mavericks, and then being in Washington. And so for him, you can see it that it's just different. And it feels good that not only is there an excitement, inside the organization, but with the fan base, it feels like there's a lot of excitement to get this season going. So with that being said, tonight after a game, Greg, let's do what we always do, and let's cue up the morning box score.
Yeah.
123, New York Knicks 110. Celtics improved to 3-1 on the preseason. Let's start with the New York Knicks. Quentin Grimes, 22 points tonight, 7 of 12 from 3, 12 points for Mitchell Robinson to go along with 7 rebounds, 15 points for Dante DiVincenzo, 16 points for Deuce McBride, 6 assists, 4 steals, and some really, really impressive defense in certain situations from Deuce McBride. Shout out to Quentin Grimes also, who I mentioned at the top. That dude can shoot the hell out of the ball. Let's go over to the Celtics. And this is where we'll spend the majority of our time here tonight. Of course, we got to start with the guy at the top. That's Jason Tatum. He had 28 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, 5 of 8 from three-point line, 9 of 15 overall. Jaylen Brown, 17 points, 6 assists tonight, 3 of 7 from 3. Kristaps Porzingis, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 8 of 13, 4 of 8 from the field. And Greg, I want to predict that I'm going to say this a lot of times when we do these recaps after the game. Kristaps had 20 points tonight. Feels like he easily could have had 30 because all the looks he gets are just amazing. And we'll talk about that more here in just a second. Derek White, 9 points, 5 rebounds, and an assist. Drew Holiday, 10 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 15 for Sam Hauser off the bench, knocking down 3 triples. And preseason P chipped in with 11 points as well. Greg, I think likely, who knows? Joe Mazzulla, he's a bad man. We call him Crazy Joe Mazzulla for a reason. We'll see what happens on Thursday night in Charlotte, but I would imagine this is likely the last that we see of the main Celtics rotation. So take this where you will. If this is the last time that we see these main rotation players, what from tonight's game really jumped out at you?
I think the ease to which the Celtics were getting some of their looks. You know, we had Jason Tatum 9 for 15 from the field, 5 or 8 from 3, 5 for 5 from the line, but he was getting anywhere he wanted on the court. Kristaps Porzingis, you know, he's getting people wide open shots. He's getting himself wide open shots. Anytime they run a high pick and roll action, pick and pop action with Kristaps, he's either 10 feet of space for a walk-in three-pointer, which he's going to knock down 50% of the time, or people are overreacting to him and, you know, they're sending 2 to the ball or whatever it is. And we're getting other people, you know, 4-on-3 action and wide open shots in the corner. So that Tatum and Porzingis pick and roll really stood out to me as like a staple that the Celtics can go to. I think one other thing that stood out to me was Jaylen Brown's willingness to make the extra pass. He led the team in assists tonight with 6 assists.
Yeah, that was a little shocking, a little surprising seeing that.
Yeah, and he had some really nice I guess just like looks. Some of it wasn't actually executed, but there are a few times where you could see him thinking to make the extra pass. He came off pick and roll a couple times with Porzingis. He tried to throw that behind the back pass that Tatum likes to do, back to the pick and pop 3 that I saw with Al. So those are the things that stood out to me, just the way that Porzingis is kind of allowing Tatum and Brown to find ways to play off of each other, you know, which is something that a lot of people have been looking for over time. And I think Porzingis's professionalism in the pick and pop and the pick and roll is really standing out to me as something that the Celtics have been sorely lacking over the past 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, for better or worse, because we're always going to be scared every time Kristaps Porzingis takes a leap or goes through the lane in traffic. He very well may be the key to the Celtics season and certainly their ceiling. I think we've replaced Rob Williams' ceiling with the Kristaps Porzingis ceiling, and this is, you know, this is a church, right? The church ceiling here is what we're looking at with Kristaps Porzingis. It's very high up there, but to your point, you know, the way that he opens up the offensive side of the ball for this team, it's just been staggering in the I think 3 games that we've seen Kristaps play. It's really stood out in the different ways in which it happens, both from the 3-point line, from the short roll and getting good looks in the mid range, from, you know, getting the lobs at the rim. The one from Peyton Pritchard late in the game, you know, that was another wrinkle. Peyton Pritchard and Kristaps 2-man game. I mean, that was just a little taste of that late. How'd you like that?
I liked it great, man. I think the idea that we're having, you know, that lineup that Mazzulla put out there for the beginning of the 4th quarter, where he had Pritchard, the 2 bigs, Hauser, and who was the last guy that
Banton
was in there?
The last guy.
And Banton. Right?
I think more than likely that might sometimes be in a more realistic lineup, maybe Holiday or maybe White, but I think Banton was the guy tonight.
Right. And just to see Mazzulla trying out some different things and really entrust Peyton Pritchard. That second stint that Pritchard got in the first half, when he came out after his first stint, I thought he was done, right? And Tatum had been on the court for a while. Derek White had been on the court for a while. So I was really wondering how Mazzulla was going to handle the end of half rotation. And he ended up going to Pritchard and he ended up going to Hauser and giving them a second stint in the first half. I think is so important for a guy like Pritchard to get his confidence and know that he's going to have, like, Mazzulla's looking for opportunities to get him back on the court, looking for opportunities to weaponize Hauser. There was this great play that the Celtics ran. They started out in a horns action with Hauser in the left corner, and they ended up going pick and roll with the ball side big and the weak side big and the weak side wing, set a double staggered pin down for Hauser, who came all the way from the other baseline, wrapped around for a wide open three off a double stagger in the second half. And I thought that was just such a beautiful play construction. They're looking to get Hauser shots. This is something that I was clamoring for last year. I know you've been clamoring for a couple of years now, is when Sam Hauser's on the court, you have to look at that thing as a nuclear weapon, right? Anytime he can go off at any time. And that's another thing that really stood out to me, is just the way that the Celtics, year 2 of Mazzulla ball, they all seem to understand the purpose a little bit more.
Yeah, 23 of 52 from three-point range, knocked down a lot of threes, got a lot of really good looks. But I think one of the interesting wrinkles within that for me was, number one, we're hearing a little bit more from Joe, which I think is making it easier for us to kind of understand what he's trying to do. Like, he even talked about, he just wasn't ready for what happened last year.
Yeah.
And I think you are seeing, I don't blame him either. And I think you're seeing a lot of that maturity, but I feel like even within the Celtics still taking over 53s, and I mean, obviously knocked down 23 of them. It was a great night for that. I still felt like there was some good variance in the ways that the Celtics were getting those looks and other shots that they were taking. One play that just really stood out to me that I, really wanted to see more of last year, and we didn't. Al Horford in the mid post, just let the ball, and then you can have movement off of that, and you trust Al to make the right read. But Al also has a really good mid range game that we never really utilized, or back to the basket game. In this case, he just kind of, I don't know if it was Mitchell Robinson or who was guarding him, but he just faced him up, didn't have the angles.
I think it was Sims.
It might have been Sims, but shot right over him, got that 2-point shot. We didn't see that a lot. You saw Drew Holiday in the post at one point tonight. That was something I asked for a lot with Marcus Smart, because I felt like we always got good looks when we ran it with Marcus. Now you can do it with Drew Holiday. We saw Tatum get some looks in the post. So, to Mazzulla's points that he's mentioned, in interviews this year, there's a variance to it. It feels different in a very, very positive way for me from what we're seeing so far.
Definitely. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back from the break, we could talk about this 4th preseason game. We could probably go like a whole hour and a half tonight on this.
Yeah, we'll keep at least 2 segments. 40. Yeah, we'll do 2 segments on it. Then we got some fun over-unders here at the end of the podcast. All right, Greg. So we were talking about Joe Mazzulla, and I actually want to stick here for a little bit. I think there's 2 big topics that I want to talk about. Let's go with the probably the one that's most prevalent. Let's talk about the starting lineup, because this is, like I said, this is probably the last time that we see the main rotation of players. And there's only been 2 games this preseason that we've seen the top 6, which is really the Celtics bread and butter. Although Peyton Pritchard's kind of sitting over here like, guys, I'm the preseason MVP. What do I got to do over here to make this Celtics top 7? We'll get there eventually. But let's just focus on that top 6, because that's where the starters are going to be. So the very first game of the preseason, Drew Holiday comes off the bench. A lot of debate. Hey, is this maybe it was just, he showed up to camp a few days before, so maybe it just made sense. That was kind of the thought process behind it. Tonight, Al Horford comes off the bench. You see them go with the Derek White, Drew Holiday backcourt. The Jays on the wings, Jason Tatum effectively playing the 4, Kristaps Porzingis at the 5. I think ultimately you and I both fall into the camp of it really matters more who closes than who starts. But what do you think you're trying to read from Joe Mazzulla from looking at what he ran out there tonight?
Well, I think he's, taking a page out of the old Brad Stevens book and experimenting a lot with different lineups and lineup combinations to see which groups actually play well together. I'm sure Mazzulla is seeing some stuff in practice. He's trying some stuff out in practice that he's then trying to take to the games. I think I wouldn't have read too much into Holiday coming off the bench. Just like in hindsight, he had only been with the team for like 2 days, as you mentioned. So I think it makes, when you make a trade like that for Drew Holiday, when you make a trade like moving Marcus Smart for Kristaps Porzingis, you're trading for Jrue Holiday to be a star. You're trading for Kristaps Porzingis to unlock everything in the offense as we're seeing. And you're also entrusting Derek White to step up into a more empowered role, right? So Al Horford's the logical guy to come off the bench. With the way that Mazzulla wants to play, I think that it makes a lot more sense to not start the two bigs because it's easier to find a balance of minutes there, right? I think the first sub tonight, Horford and Pritchard came in, right? Maybe Horford, Pritchard, and Hauser all came in together.
It was so I remember watching or noting this down. It was Horford and Hauser were the first two that came in for Derek White and Tatum.
Derek White and Tatum, that's right, right. So it seemed like Mazzulla was still able to find a lot of opportunities to go double big, but you don't need to start the game double big, especially with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown being as willing to get physical as they are. And also, you just saw the defensive strategy, right? When Porzingis was involved, more or less they were in drop. Porzingis was just hanging out in the paint, but everybody else was switching very aggressively any actions in off ball or on ball. And I think that allowed for a lot of disruption in the passing lanes. Anytime like McBride or DiVincenzo or Grimes was coming off a screen action that didn't involve Porzingis, they were just getting, Jaylen Brown sliding over with his long arms, Jason Tatum in a passing lane, Derek White there, Jrue Holiday peel switching off onto somebody. There's all these great actions, and the level of intensity that we saw out of those guards funneling, knowing that you have Kristaps Porzingis on the back line, you have a great rim protector on the back line, you can be a little bit more aggressive, disrupting the ball. And I think you're seeing right now everybody that was saying Marcus Smart had kind of lost a step over the last couple of years with his on-ball pressure. You're seeing that the difference with Jrue Holiday. Jrue Holiday is just a different level of on-ball defender. Marcus did a lot of great things. He made all the hustle plays, probably a little bit better of a rim protector, can guard up a little bit more than Jrue can. But Jrue can do it himself. He can do it himself, but I think that's like Marcus's secret sauce, his ability to guard 1 through 5. Jrue, he can do it, but he's more. I was
gonna say, having said that, big ball won, at least for tonight. It lives, baby. I saw the first possession. I was like, maybe I, sometimes like you just get kind of lost when you're watching the game. You're like, maybe they just like had to match up this way. But then it became pretty evident that was the matchup, and I think that was part of what you're saying. It allows for easier switches in other matchups, but Jrue Holiday was right there on Mitchell Robinson to start the game, which I thought was another interesting Joe Mazzulla call.
Right. That's also a knock on Mitchell Robinson for not having a post game.
For sure. For sure. That's you're not gonna be able to do that with a lot. I mean, that's the thing. Obviously, we have to keep this with a grain of salt. It was the Knicks JV squad tonight.
Yeah.
It was interesting though, because they had Jericho Sims and Mitchell Robinson, which not the most offensively dynamic, twin tower duo, but two really big guys. For you to see this,
and Sims is an athlete.
Yeah, and so if you're going to go with the non-double big lineup and you're playing Jason Tatum at the 4, it actually at least was a good test in that sense for, when you go up against a Cleveland and you have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, different beast. I know. I'm just saying from this aspect that you actually have, those two giants in there. But Greg, you mentioned just kind of the splits, and that's why for me, it was specifically referring to Al Horford coming off the bench. And I think for me, Al plays 23 minutes tonight, Kristaps just under 28. I think you extrapolate that out to a full game, you're looking at Kristaps probably somewhere around 31, Al sitting around 25, somewhere in that range. I think that's the right split. I think that's the right split of what you want. And then there's going to be certain matchups where Al might be closing and Kristaps might be off the court, where Kristaps is your 45, your 7-8 inning, what used to be inning eater in a baseball game. And then Al Horford might come in for those, last 3 to 4 minutes for defensive purposes if you need more matchups on the perimeter or whatever it might be. And so I really like the idea of, I think it makes the most sense for Al Horford to come off the bench. I think if you mix and match it with certain matchups, that will be fine. But I do think that, the way that it played out, it went really nicely. And I think tonight it was kind of interesting to see. It feels like if this is a true indication of how Joe is going to play this, you've got 8 guys solidly in the rotation, and there's a little sprinkle of Luke Cornett that will get about 5 to 10 minutes kind of mixed in there. But those 8 guys I really liked it. I really liked the way that Joe utilized the lineups, the way that his substitution patterns for tonight. And if that's going to be the 8 guys with the side of Luke, if that's what you're rolling with, I can't find too many flaws with what you're going to find. I think rebounding at times will be challenging, but other than that, I don't see many holes with those 8 to 8.5 guys.
Here's my one flaw that I saw tonight. Derek White and Drew Holiday are not primary ball handlers. Neither of them are.
Interesting. This is a good point. I was thinking a little bit about this as well too. Continue.
The offense ran best when Jason Tatum had the ball in his hands,
Facts.
running high pick and roll, right? So Miles McBride was a beast.
Yeah, he was D'ing up, man.
He looked like prime Marcus Smart on the ball tonight.
Yeah, he was impressive. And I'll say the shout out to the Knicks culture, man. They have established a culture over there. They're tough as shit. They didn't, that's their JV team, and they did not quit. And, specifically Miles McBride and Quentin Grimes, I thought were extremely impressive tonight.
For sure. So I want to get to this question from one of our viewers on YouTube here from Sayer Osmani. Do you think Drew is going to have more of a defensive impact for the C's or more of an offensive impact with his playmaking ability? I think the easy answer to that question, it's a great question. Thank you for dropping that in the comments, is his defensive impact. His ball pressure, the ability to pick up full court. We saw Mazzulla go to that full court press for
something else I wanted to talk about here. That was
possessions.
Talk about trying to create your own momentum. That was something new for the Celtics as well.
Yeah, that was the first curveball that we really saw out of Mazzulla, right? Those game changer plays that you can go to, momentum killers, momentum changers that you can go to. Having Drew Holiday, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard with Tatum and Brown and Porzingis once again on the back line, so that if you get beat, you have Porzingis protecting against a layup at the rim.
I mean, the other part was Jason Tatum and Porzingis and Horford were kind of flying around like free safeties back there as they had. And I was curious to ask you this. What would you call that? The full press zone? I don't know if there would be a specific terminology.
They're in a 2-2-1.
Which is a 2-2-1. Okay.
Yeah.
But it really allowed for those guys on the back line to play like free safeties. And you saw them break up a couple of plays, create a couple of turnovers on that back end of the zone.
Yeah. So with the 2-2-1 zone, and there are ways to break it. The Knicks weren't doing a very good job with it. They clearly weren't prepared for it. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to try and dribble through it, right? Which Miles McBride was trying to do. And they were trying to screen the first defender on the ball, but then they were just going right into the second defender, right? So Drew Holiday would pick somebody up, and then Miles McBride would get a screen. He would go off the screen, and Peyton Pritchard would be right there for him, right? And then in the 2-2-1 press, which is a very basic press, you're going to have the two really athletic wings at the second 2 spot, right on the second level. And one of them, I don't know what their read is, but one of their jobs is to take away the middle pass, right? And the other guy has to drop back, and then, the back line might rotate up. But on that press, I just thought it was like the amount of ball pressure the Celtics were able to create there, and to get teams to go into their offense at 12 seconds versus at 18 seconds. I don't know if there are studies out there. I'm sure there are, but the longer it takes for a team to get into their sets, the less likely it is they're going to have a successful possession. So when you think about teams like the Bucks, when you think about teams like the Heat, you need to be able to go to something else when Jimmy Butler's going crazy. And you're like, you know what, we can't just let Jimmy Butler dribble the ball up the court and then just like go ISO 5 possessions in a row against Grant Williams. Like we're going to have other things that we can do this year. And I think Drew Holiday, to answer that question, is going to unlock a lot of defensive options for Joe Mazzulla.
Yeah. And then to address the second part of that, I do want to talk about Drew's offensive impact, because to me, so far in the preseason, that feels like one of the elements that still isn't quite sorted out as to where his role falls. You mentioned, Greg, that the offense seemingly worked best tonight with Jason Tatum as the main ball handler, right? So I think at times where Drew Holiday fit within that offensive ecosystem was still a little unclear. You saw it in a couple miscommunications on different cuts. Some of them, there was a couple times where there was at least one I'm thinking specifically on the back line, just bad pass. But there were times where they weren't quite sure what was going to be Drew Holiday's spot, if you will. Where is he going to be most comfortable if he's spotting up for three? With Kristaps, it seemed like it's like a glove, right? It feels very seamless that they're able to play off each other. Like you said, it's opening up things for the Jays. I think, when we're going to see Drew being the lead ball handler, when he's going to be the main guy with the ball in his hand, setting everything up versus who he is off the ball. I think that's still going to be something early in the season to keep an eye on as to what that ultimately looks like, because it still feels a little bit clunky for me right now.
Yeah, and I think your point about Drew's ability to play out of the post is actually going to unlock a lot, especially early in the season as we try and find what that balance is. Giving the ball to Holiday, like I think it was the first possession of the game. The Celtics got the ball to Holiday. They looked for him ducking in
On the baseline, then he kicked it out to Porzingis for
right. So
the three in the corner.
the pass ended up at the baseline, but he ducked
Yeah.
in under the basket, right? And they just couldn't get it to him in time. And he just sealed DiVincenzo. The pass was a little off, and he kicked it out to Porzingis. But that type of offense, I think, is going to be there. Drew's really good in the post. He's really good with his left hand. He's great at turning ISOs into post ups. He uses his butt really well. He's really strong around the basket, and he's got great touch around the basket. Drew Holiday is not like your typical pick and roll point guard. He's not a Trae Young. He's not a Dame Lillard. He's not one of those guys that's just going to be able to dance behind screens and create offense for the rest of the team. That's not who Drew Holiday is. He's never been that. So I think Holiday's going to unlock a lot of transition offense, and he's going to do a lot of secondary playmaking, because I do think when it matters, Jason Tatum's going to have the ball in his hands, running pick and roll with Porzingis.
I mean, I think he has to, right? I mean, that's kind of, if you're going to be in that top 5 category, which I think Tatum is, at the very least, he's right there in that conversation. I don't want to unhash, go all in on that right now. Like, all those guys, you have to be able to give them the ball and have them be able to make a play or do something, with the ball in their hands late. So the more reps you have, I mean, it's just common sense. The more reps you have, 10,000 hours, Malcolm Gladwell, the more times that you have those repetitions, the better you're going to be when the moment occurs. So I think, I think this is actually a benefit for the Celtics, that they're going, if that is the best that they look, that's how they're going to need to look in the moments that matter. Now, of course, you want to worry about load management and all that. I'm talking about in-game load management, not him missing games, but just the stress that goes into that. And so you do want to have the Derek Whites, the Drew Holidays, whoever it may be, pick up some of that slack. I think they'll figure it out. I think there will be certain matchups where that's going to be more comfortable. And I think one thing that feels evident, even though, Jaylen Brown had the 6 assists, and he did lead the team with 4 turnovers as well, is that it's funny saying this in a game where he leads the team with 6 assists. I do think it still looks like, to our colleague Adam's point, him as that elite play finisher is still the best role for Jaylen Brown. And so I think there's a couple times where the Knicks forced the ball to Jaylen Brown's hands. Specifically, I think it was maybe one of the first possessions in the third quarter. It was just an all Jaylen Brown possession. That's not what you want. Like that, he was trying to figure out something with Kristaps whether it was going to be a pick and roll, pick and pop. It just never really got going, resulted in a turnover. And so, I think it's going to be important for the Drew Holidays, for the Derek Whites, even for the Peyton Pritchards, when they're in there, that they can take some of that load away from Jason Tatum. But I think it's ultimately going to be a good thing that in the parts of the game that are really going to matter, Tatum's going to continue to get those reps.
Yeah, and I thought Jaylen played a great game. You're right. He did have those 4 turnovers. A couple times he got tunnel vision. He tried to prove he can drive left and all that stuff that Jaylen's gonna continue to try to do. It's just when Miles McBride is covering you, just PSA to everybody out there this year, don't try and dribble past him. He's gonna take the ball from you. He took the ball from Derek White. He took the ball from Drew Holiday. He took the ball from Jaylen Brown. He had 4 steals, and he probably had like 5 or 6 more plays where he completely stonewalled somebody or deflected the ball. So I think that's something that Jaylen, he'll learn over time to pick his spots a little bit more. Like when he attacked Mitchell Robinson, right? And he had that great dunk off the pick and roll. Like those are the spots that Jaylen can find within this offense. And what I'm really excited about this year, Will, and let's take our final break before we get into these over-unders, is Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum's efficiency numbers along with Kristaps Porzingis' efficiency numbers. It's going to be something special.
Yeah, the Porzingis efficiency numbers. I'm like I said when I was going through the morning box score, he had 20 points tonight. I think every single game I'm gonna be like that easily could be 30 because
Yeah.
every single look he gets is just wide open, and there's gonna be games where all of those shots are going in, and he's gonna before we get to our over under, here's a quick over under for you. Kristaps Porzingis over under. I'm gonna set my own line here. Let's go over under 2.5 40-point games for Kristaps Porzingis this year.
Ooh. I'm gonna go over.
I'm gonna go over. I just think it's gonna happen where there's gonna be a handful of nights where he's just red hot and he's just getting those amazing looks time and time again, mixed in with a handful of easy buckets. It's really exciting to see what he brings to this team. So that's likely going to do it for the top six. We'll see. We'll check back in after the game on Thursday. We'll at least pop in here and review that game real quick. That's when maybe we'll see if we have these final roster spots. I know, Greg, you and Adam got into that in the last podcast, a little bit about who might be those last couple of guys. Thursday could be their last opportunity. So we'll check back in on that. But let's take our final break, as you said here. And then let's do a little gambling corner from two guys who you probably shouldn't take gambling advice from. All right, Greg. So it's getting close to that time of the season. We'll have to lock in some official bets here before the season starts. Maybe we'll do that this weekend or early next week before the first game. But let's start by taking a look at some over-unders. And the way that we want to set this up, we're going to look at the Celtics. We're going to look at their over-under win total for the season. And then I told Greg, bring to this podcast 3 over-unders that you feel like are locks. I'll bring 3 as well. And this can be from any team in the NBA. And we'll go through those. And just for those playing along at home, we're using the FanDuel Sportsbook over-under win totals that they have set up. So let's start with the Celtics here, Greg. Celtics over-under total right now, 54.5 wins. Last year, just for reference here, Celtics go 57-25 as the 2 seed in the East. 54.5. What are you thinking?
I mean, after tonight, it's kind of hard to pick the under. The thing about this team is they're new and all of the pieces work together, right? So I think the way that we saw the Celtics get such easy looks tonight, they're going to have some games where they just completely blow people out. Their teams are just not going to be able to hang. If they don't come ready to play against the Celtics, they're going to get blown out the building.
Yeah.
Now, I do think that the league has gotten a lot deeper, and I think that reflects in a lot of these over-unders being in the low to mid 40s. So it's actually really hard for me.
In the 40s, yeah.
Really hard for me. But I think the Celtics, if I were going to bet on a team to have 60 wins this season, I would bet on the Celtics. I don't think there's any other team in the league. Maybe the Lakers. I really like the Lakers this year.
You really like the Lakers.
I did, dude. I think the Lakers are going to be really good. Maybe the Nuggets, but I think the Celtics are the team, after the disappointing end to last season, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown really entering their prime, Kristaps Porzingis being in his prime, coming off of his best year. If there was any team, especially with the new coaching staff and Gundy, all these things, the Celtics are betting big on this season, Will, and I think we should bet big on the Celtics.
Yeah, they're plus 100 on the odds right here. And I'm with you. I think it's the over for this team. The only reason I would think to do the under for the Celtics is you're just hedging that you think at some point this team is going to have to deal with injuries and try to overcome that. And mostly at this point, you're looking at, that falling on Kristaps Porzingis because the Jays never miss time. He's going to sit out back-to-backs, but has a track record that speaks for itself. Same with Drew Holiday, same with Derek White. These guys just typically don't miss time. And so if you're taking the under, you're thinking Kristaps is going to miss a big chunk, and then you don't believe in the reinforcements of Luke Cornett and O'Shea Brissett and whoever else it might be that would have to kind of, prop up that front court. I think that's really the only angle to not seeing the over for this team, especially when last year, like I think we've said it before, this team has a much higher ceiling than what the team last year did. And they got 57 wins with a rookie head coach who has admittedly kind of stated I was underwater. I didn't know what I was doing. I was struggling to stay afloat. And now he has a full coaching staff. Now he has a full offseason to prepare. And you've added 2 all-stars to your team, and a guy in Drew Holiday who's a borderline all NBA type player as well. Like it's really hard to make that case for the under, except for what I said. So I'm with you. I think the Celtics are a good over bet. So if you're looking to get those right now, plus 100, FanDuel Sportsbook over 54 and a half wins. I recommend taking the Celtics for that over. With that, let's go into the other three locks as we looked around the league here, Greg. And do you want to go first? You want to give me first pick?
Well,
how you feeling?
the way that I did this was I started with teams that I thought could win 50 games. And I think I misspoke earlier, Will, when I said the Lakers could win 60. I meant 50.
Okay. I was going to that makes way more sense because 60 games is a shit ton of games to win.
Yeah. Because I had the Lakers as one of my teams that could win 50 games. So that's how I kind of started. It's like, what teams do I think could win 50 games? And then I just wanted to check to see what the over-unders were, right? So I thought the Celtics could win 50 games, and then I saw 54.5, and coming into this, I probably was going to pick the under, but after seeing them tonight, I'm like, all right, recency bias, let's go. Like, let's just rock.
But I'll say this too. I think because the league is so deep as a whole, I'm not going to be surprised. I wonder if there's a line somewhere for how many teams win 50 games. I would think it's maybe 4 teams that are maybe going to win 50 plus games this year because there's so much parity throughout the league. But I just think the Celtics are going to, I think the Celtics and Bucks have such a large gap between them and even the next tier of the East. And then the lower part of the East is going to be weaker than the lower part of the West. So I think that's going to help teams like the Celtics and the Bucks get to that 50 plus win total.
Right. So, what other teams beside the Celtics do you think, Celtics and Bucks, do you think that can win 50 games in the East or in the league?
Yeah, well, we'll stick in the East because I really only think as of right now, there's only one other team that I would feel comfortable saying can get to that 50 win plateau. And let's put an asterisk next to the 76ers because I need to see if they figure out. Just let me know what happens with the James Harden situation. I would just stay the hell away from Philly right now because I think Maxi's. I think if they can move Harden and just get even, let's just say they get Norm Powell back and some picks or whatever. I actually kind of like that move just in the sense that Norm Powell helps you replace some of the scoring. And then you unleash Tyrese Maxey. You can start DeAnthony Melton without having to make a whole big deal out of it. And now it gives your team more balance. Tyrese Maxey will be an all-star if they trade James Harden. That is one prediction that I don't think is that much of a hot take, but I think that will happen. So I think removing Philly, because I just don't know what to do with them, I think Cleveland can go back over 50 wins again. I think Cleveland as a regular season team, where they've added in that shooting with Max Strus and George Niang, you get another year of Evan Mobley. Jared Allen being hurt right now, I think he's going to be out for the first couple weeks of the regular season for like 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a little bit less. I think that's one of those blessings in disguise. Let's see what Evan Mobley looks like. How's he hold up at the 5? Let's see what their lineups can look like. Because I think the Cavs are, like I said, I don't know if Mobley and Allen ultimately are going to work together or be too redundant that they both can't shoot offensively and really kind of clog that up for 2 smaller guards in Mitchell and Garland. We'll have to see, but regular season, I don't see why this team, and I think their line is 50.5. I don't see why they wouldn't get back to 51, 52 games. For them, I think it would be close, but I think the Cavaliers are going to be a team that can get over 50 wins.
Yeah, I also wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of have a, regression to maybe like 46, 47 wins this year. Just you never know. You never know with that team.
Yeah, I'm just higher on them. I think a lot of people are just thinking of, and I get it, the last image of them, not great. So I totally get that. I'm choosing to kind of look past that because I think there's some things that can be corrected. And ultimately, it's just, do you need to move Jared? Like, I think tell me what you think about this deal real quick. Jared Allen for Lou Dort.
Jared Allen for Lou Dort.
I think it helps both. It doesn't make both teams championship contenders, but I think it makes both teams better.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense for the Thunder just to go get Rob Williams, give up a couple of those picks.
For sure. That's the counterpoint to that. For sure. I agree with that.
Okay, so we said we were going to come with some locks. So when I was going over the 50 win plateau, one of the teams that I came to was the Milwaukee Bucks. And I just said to myself, like, yes, Dame and Giannis are going to be really hard to stop. Do I believe in any other part of that team? And for me, the answer is no. I don't believe in Chris Middleton. I don't believe in Pat Connaughton being elevated to another role. I definitely don't believe in Jay Crowder. The one guy on the team that I kind of believe in is Beauchamp.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I
You've been
really
watching
like
some Bucks preseason, I take it.
I really like that kid. I liked him last year too. I thought he should have played a little bit more. So I was thinking, if I didn't look at the lines first, I said, what would I set the Bucks line at? And I said I would have set the Bucks line at 50.5. So the fact that they're 53.5, I'm going under. So that's
I
one
think
of my
that's a
locks.
reasonable call. I think that's a reasonable call. Yeah, that's a tough line. I'm with you in the sense that it all hinges for me. What's Chris Middleton? What
Mhm.
version of Chris Middleton? If it's Chris Middleton from 2 years ago before he got hurt in the playoffs when they were going to play the Celtics on the way to the finals, if it's that Chris Middleton, I feel pretty comfortable with them getting 54, 55 wins. But I think that's probably about a 5-win difference of if you're getting that guy and you're getting him like a healthy version that's going to play 65 to 70 games, so that's the big swing regular season factor for me, because you're right with Pat Connaughton. Okay, Jay Crowder, we'll see. I mean, you're championing Marjon Beauchamp right now
Yeah.
as the, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where they're at. And where the Celtics are at with Al Horford, he's not a luxury because he is very important to the team. But Brook Lopez is the same age as Al Horford and is maybe their third best player if they can't rely on Chris Middleton. And that's just, I mean, he's great for what he does for that team, but that is tough to rely on for 82 games to get you to that point. So I think for the 53.5 win total, I'm with you on the under. I think they'll get over 50, but but being more in that 50, 51, 52
Yeah.
range feels a little bit more realistic.
All right. Give me one of your locks.
All right. So I'll keep with your 50 win theme that you got here. I'll give you one of my locks here. Phoenix Suns, 52.5 wins. I'm taking the under.
Okay.
They're a
Tell me why.
postseason team. They're a postseason team. Kevin Durant has missed a ton of games over the last several seasons. Bradley Beal's, I think, played 90 games total over the last 2 seasons. Devin Booker missed time last year. We're not going to hold that against him. He'll play a lot of the time, but there's just not a lot of depth there. And all they're going to care about is they're not going to care about seed. They're not going to care about where and really who they're playing, other than maybe the Nuggets, because everyone wants to avoid the Nuggets in the entire league. But other than that, I think they're going to feel comfortable with their firepower versus any other team that they go up against. So I think banking on their health, banking on the parity, especially how deep the West is, which basically every team minus maybe the Spurs, and even the Spurs are going to be, pretty good out West. Like every single one of those teams, and the Trailblazers, even the Trailblazers have like a bunch of talent too, depending on if they keep Brogdon and Rob or if they end up flipping them. Like that's still 7 solid real NBA players in Portland. Like there's just no easy wins out there. So the nights that they don't have KD and Beal and Booker firing on all cylinders, there's just not a lot in the tank, I think, around them. Now I know that they've got Eric Gordon, Nurkic. Nurkic is fine. I like Ayton more than Nurkic at this point in their careers, but maybe he is a better fit. But either way, I just think for them, they're going to live in that high 40s range, 48 to 47 to 49 wins. Maybe they hit 50, but getting to 53 wins with all of the health concerns and just being a team that clearly is not built for the regular season, I think that's a good bet for an under.
I love it. I'm going to go with a team that this is mostly because of the injury concerns at this point. I'm going to go with the New Orleans Pelicans. I haven't even looked at what their over under is. I'm just going under whatever the number is. And their number is 44.5. I feel good about that.
Okay.
I would have the Pelicans right around the 40 to 42 win mark this year.
That's where they were last year, 42 and 40. And I think I can't remember how many games it was, but it's an astonishingly low number of games that Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson have actually played together over the last 2 years.
Well, they played tonight, right? Let's see. They beat the
they beat
Magic.
Orlando 104 to 92 tonight.
How much did they play? Okay, so yeah, Zion looks like he had a decent game tonight. 5 steals from Zion. Looks like he was frisky out there. The
16
Magic
points, 6 of 8 from the field, 8 of 16 for Ingram. He had 18 points as well, 6 assists. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that for you for the Pelicans one. I think that's one where it's I mean, like you said, was a really difficult exercise because everybody, especially in the West, is in that like mid 40s range, and it's all just
Mhm.
going to depend. Oh, do you get 5 more Zion games? Then like if you're hoping that you get 65, do you end up with 60 or do you end up with 70? And that's going
Yeah.
to kind of swing where it goes, right? As to what they could be. But it's the Pelicans are probably one of the weirdest teams in the league right
Yeah,
now.
I could see them at 43 and 39. That sounds right.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay. I like that one. I like that one. Let me go to my next one. I think this will be a fun one. You actually mentioned this team in passing earlier. Let's go to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So
Squad.
their over-under win total is 44.5. I think they're probably my number one league pass team. I am going to be definitely locked in to some Oklahoma City Thunder basketball, but I think this is probably an under. I think this is everybody riding high on
You think it's
SGA,
an
which it should
under?
be. I think it's an under. Yeah. I mean, they went 40 and 42 last year. They're adding Chet. Love Chet.
And
Love
they
the
sat
potential.
SGA down the stretch.
Last year?
I'm pretty sure.
No, they made the play in, and then they almost made the playoffs.
Oh,
That was the
yeah,
year before.
maybe I'm thinking the year
That
before.
was the
Yeah.
year before they sat
Okay.
down SGA. Last year they pushed and made it to the play and beat the Pelicans and then lost in the 8-9
That's right.
play-in.
That's right. But
Um,
they were 40 and 42.
They were 40 and 42. So they got to get 5 more wins just by adding Chet and growth. Now, listen, that's not impossible, but it's still a team of mostly like guys that are 23, 24 and under. And there's so much in the West as far as like we're talking about right now with just high level basketball teams that are all going to be in those mid 40s. So can they get 2-3 more wins and become a 42, 43 win team? Yeah. 5 more wins with just Chet. I mean, my concerns with the Thunder, I think they need a little bit more shooting. And I think they played a lot of small ball in a very elite manner last year, and they're getting Chet, but that size is still going to be a problem at certain points for them, I
Not
would
when they
think, which
trade
is
for Rob.
why, which is like I said, why you're saying if they get Rob. And so that's what would change this for the Thunder is that I don't know if you've seen how many picks they just added 2 more second round picks today, but it's something like over the next 5 years, I think it's 17 first round picks and 22 second round picks, which is just ludicrous. It doesn't make any sense. But that, I mean, if you're betting the over for the Thunder, to me, you're saying they're going to make the first, maybe not an all-in move, but they're making the first step towards an all-in move, which would be a move like Rob Williams, like you're saying. And so in that case, yeah, I could see 45 a little bit more, but with simply adding Chet, who has never gone through a full NBA season and expecting likely progression from guys like Giddey and Jalen Williams, both Jalen Williams. I think they'll be better, but 5 wins better, especially with how tough the West is going to be, feels like a stretch to me.
SGA played 68 games last year. Just to let you know. Okay, I'm going to go to another team that the moment Robert Williams was traded from the Boston Celtics, I tweeted out, I have the receipts, that 2 teams should trade for Robert Williams. Oklahoma City Thunder, that's my number 1 pick. My number 2 pick is to reunite Robert Williams and Ime Udoka. And I am going with the over for the Houston Rockets this year. I haven't looked at it, but I knew that I would once again.
I like this blind guessing of the over-unders here for you. I'm a big fan of this.
Yeah, because I heard that all of them were kind of in the same spot. So with the Houston Rockets, let's see, where are they? Why can't I find them right now?
You got to go through the H's, my guy. It's in alphabetical order.
Where am I? Oh, there we go. Okay. My screen wasn't working.
I was gonna try to freelance here a little bit and try to buy you some
time. So okay, yeah. I would have the Rockets at like 34 wins this year. They're at the over-unders at 31.5. I think the Rockets can go 34 and 48. Would that be the right number? 34 and 48? That gets you to 82.
Let me see here. 34. Yeah, that's right, I think. Let's go with it. Let's go with
it. So I got
yeah.
the Rockets going 34 and 48 this year. So that's 2.5 games over that number. I love what they did in the offseason, bringing in Van Vliet and Dylan Brooks just as like guys that are going to play their role. And I wouldn't call Dylan Brooks an adult in the room, but
yeah, that's for sure.
He's definitely going to set a tone. And Ime is just going to love Dylan the villain. So I think with Jabari Smith, they have so much talent, dude. They've got Jabari Smith, they've got Sengun, they've got Jalen Green, they've got the Tom, was it Thompson? Is that the name?
They
Amen
have
Thompson?
Amen Thompson.
Yeah, they have Amen Thompson on the squad. I just
Cam Whitmore, who's dunking
Cam
on fools
Whitmore.
in
Yeah,
preseason.
I think they just have so much on their roster with Ime being the take no shit coach. I think he can get them to 34 wins this year.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. And I think the biggest point that you made is when you bring in guys like Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet, they're veterans that are going to elevate your team while playing your role. But for a young team, they're not going to take away from the growth that you really want to see from Jalen Green, from Jabari Smith, from Alperen Sengun. Like those guys are going to fit in pretty seamlessly to elevate you and put you in contested games, but not detract from, oh man, it's just taking the ball away from Jalen Green, or Dylan Brooks is just helping you on your defense. He's going to take some shots you don't like. That's part of the Dylan Brooks deal, but he's going to set that tone that that Ime's all about, right? So I think that's a pretty solid pick. I could see that one, and I think like you said, if they do go get a guy like Rob Williams, who seems like that would be a perfect pairing for a guy like Sengun, who would need that support in the back end. Now, he would need to improve his outside shooting a bit to really play them together. But I do think that would be an interesting spot for Rob Williams, who, just on the Rob Williams note, the more I think about it, I don't think the Blazers need to trade him. I think there's a world in which they could just keep him because I think he could work really well with some of their young guys. But if he plays and is healthy for the first 30 games or so, is playing well and stays healthy for the first 30 games or so, they may have to trade him just because there's going to be like 4, 5, 6 teams that will jump into a bidding war to give you probably
especially
two
since
more
he's making
first-round
$11 million
picks.
a year.
That's what I'm saying. It's super easy to match his salary. And there's going to be some teams that are like, this is the guy that is going to make a difference. I mean, I don't even know what I was thinking about this earlier today. I don't even know what Philadelphia has to offer. But if you had Rob Williams on their bench as coming off the bench when you have Joel Embiid sitting, or potentially at times playing with Joel Embiid, I don't know how that would necessarily work. That could get a little frisky. The Miami Heat, they were rolling out with Mason Plumlee as their backup center last year. If they can just go all in and say, hey, listen, we're only going to score 100 points because we didn't get Dame and didn't really replace our shooting, but you're not going to score more than 98 points, and we're going to have Bam and Rob on the floor at all times.
Sheesh.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's at 10 to 11 minutes, there's a lot of teams that could take that chance and make that move. So I think they may just have to sell on him because they're going to get such crazy offers. But all right, let's go to my last over under here. I'm trying to think about which team is more fun to talk about. Hey, let's do this one because I was kind of surprised that you didn't have it. But I think if you had looked at this, you probably would have had them on here. Let's go Dallas Mavericks. 43.5.
Under.
Yeah, it's hammer. This is I was saving this one because I was like, Greg might probably have this one, but this is definitely the under for me too. Just watching even a little bit of
they are gonna suck.
And try not to read too much into preseason, but God, I do not like almost anything about that team other than the fact that Luka's still going to have some awesome nights. Luka's going to drag them to a close to 500 record, but they're not getting over 500. I don't think.
Hell
I just
no,
don't.
Dude.
I just don't think they're getting over 500. Like,
yeah,
they'll be hovering
gonna
around
be,
it,
they're gonna be 38 and 44.
Which is literally what they were last year. So that
would
be
all right.
That would be on par with what they. Yeah, I just don't know what the Mavericks are going to do with that. And oh God, I mean, okay,
that's a team that could use Rob.
They could use Rob big time. They really could. What, you don't want to run it back for the 10th year with Dwight Powell?
I just think that team sucks, man. Who do they have?
I mean, there's an
they have
argument
Luke
that
and
Grant
Kyrie
Williams is their third best player.
I know that don't work together.
Bad.
Oh my God, they're shit out of luck, man. They fucked up royally. They do not have a good team.
Yeah, it's a tough spot, and you're relying on Kyrie to eat. I mean, here's the thing. I don't even really know what the optimal version of Kyrie is anymore. But even if you're relying on that, so I guess that means you're just relying on him and Luka scoring 80 points a night. Like, that's kind of your only plan, right?
Yeah. Is there a world in which the Mavs trade Kyrie for Tyler Hero? Would the Heat do that? At least
Oh
you
boy,
get
okay. I don't know, man. I don't even know if I'm ready for that. Jimmy and Kyrie in the same world. That I don't know how the hell that would work, but that is interesting to think about. And yeah, I don't know what the Mavs move is, but we're together on this one. Hammer the Mavs under. I
yeah.
do not think that team is getting to 500 despite Luka, and that means Dallas fans, you are on Luka watch. It's Luka watch time. I think that is going to be one of the biggest storylines of next offseason is when is Luka going to say enough is enough? Well, for this episode, that's enough. We're done. We're done with this episode here of Green with Envy. Celtics have one more preseason game coming up on Thursday against the Charlotte Hornets. And then next Wednesday night, tip off, Madison Square Garden, Celtics, Knicks. It goes down for real. We'll have a few more pods and a few more quick hits before we get you all set up for the regular season. But as always, appreciate you for tuning in here. Make sure you are subscribed to us on YouTube. Make sure you're following the podcast on all social medias at Green Envy Pod. Make sure that you are following us on Spotify, Apple, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Come in and check in with your boys. That's going to do it for this episode. Greg, any final thoughts? And then let us know what we're going to hear on the way out.
You're going to hear some music from my band down here in Austin, Texas. This is just for the podcast listeners. We are Black Sheep Optimists, and this one is called Get This High. Peace, everybody.
Deuces.